So I believe hemp is one of the most important solutions. This is what most people think hemp is about. I used to carry a big reefer around, like Bob Marley style thing, right? Because everybody thinks hemp is just drugs. So many people, I saw how many people didn't put their hand up in here when he asked who's using hemp, right? That's because our government hasn't got enough intelligence to actually promote hemp and get behind hemp. Hemp is the ultimate solution as far as agriculture is concerned, as far as human food is concerned. I like to change my hat because I think hemp's a very happy, beautiful thing and not about the drugs. This is hemp. Okay. Okay, we've been growing hemp in North Queensland since 2002. Presently, we've grown in 4 different states. My company that I founded back then, we've grown in Tasmania, New South Wales, Queensland, and now we're growing in Victoria. And the biggest crop in Australia right now is in Geelong, in the neighborhood. So, well, you don't want to go there because there's rules about that, but that's one of the plants that we grew back in the mid-2000s and around 2005 or 6. I had a whole crop of plants that I grew that came from China. The seeds came from China. Because they've been growing that plant for thousands of years, their seed varieties are extremely low in THC, which is the drug-active component of the plant. This plant here, I'll just show you what it looks like. In 5 months, that's what the plants look like. The one here is actually a 7.5-month-old plant. That one tree, which became a tree, produced about 1 kilogram of seeds. 20 grams of seeds is 1,000 seeds. So you can imagine how many seeds you can get from one plant. Now, the amazing thing about that is that I was working with the Queensland, James Cook University in North Queensland. We have, they came in and did some studies and tests with the crops. But they told me that when I showed them those plants, the size of them, they said if that was a pine forest, that would take in the vicinity of 5 years to get to that size. That picture with the hands around it, you couldn't even actually get your hands around it. Oh, there he is. This is just a brief history of hemp. Hemp's been around as long as we know because it's part of the plant kingdom. But as a use of being used as a plant, it's been found in mummies, where people have found it inside of the mummies, where people have eaten the plant, as well as being wrapped in shoes and clothing that are thousands and thousands of years old. Also in Mesopotamia, where they found bridges and aqueducts that had been built with hemp fiber that are over 1,000 years old, and they're still standing there. If you combine hemp and lime, there's a small sample outside on the table. If you combine hemp and lime together, what happens is a completely different structure occurs which outlasts cement. Cement starts to decompose after about 100 years because it has radioactive components in it. The lime, when you mix it with the hemp fiber, actually petrifies. So that's why it's still around after 1,000 years. It's more flexible too. We're going to go into that a little bit more. During the Industrial Revolution, and prior to that, in the 1700s, a lot of people don't know this about hemp. One of the main reasons for the Napoleonic Wars and the precursor to World War I was who was going to control hemp in the world. Think about it, folks. When Captain Cook came over here on his ships, what did he have for sails? Hemp. What did he have for ropes? Hemp. What did the sailors wear? Hemp. The modern world, as we know it, has been conquered through hemp. The only way those ships could have sailed the seas was because of the existence of hemp fiber. No other fabric at that time could have withstood traveling in these long seafaring journeys. So hemp's played an incredibly crucial role in the development of modern civilization. The other thing people don't know about is the sailors actually were fed a food called gruel. Have you ever heard of gruel? Gruel was actually ground up hemp seeds, just boiled like porridge. And because the hemp seed is so nutritious, that's all they ate. And it was boring because they had it every day, and it has a lot of grit in it. The seeds are very tough. It's classified as a nut. But that was also the food that those guys ate. And they still managed to go around the seas. So they had all these stores of hemp. Then, of course, as we come through into the 1900s, economic imperialism, which is people taking over and colonizing different parts of the world. And now there is a modern resurgence of hemp, which is just wonderful to see. Back during, many people have heard about the conspiracy around hemp, where there was the DuPonts and there was these other people that were involved in squashing hemp. They wanted their new fibers to come in, nylon. They wanted to have chemicals that they could sell to chop up trees and break up trees and produce pulp using these chemicals. Of course, trees make really crappy paper. I'm going to tell you all about that and why that is such an important issue as well. But in order to sell these chemicals, we had to get rid of the most powerful and easy to grow plant that there was to produce fiber for paper and textiles and everything else, which was the hemp plant. So they said, okay, we're going to make it a bad thing. We're going to make it this marijuana, you know. We're going to tell people that, oh, the druggies, this is a drug plant, right? And of course, lots of jazz musicians and artist people were smoking pot and saying, okay, well, I'm getting inspiration from this. Fine. Nobody knows that Queen Victoria was also using hemp for her menstrual cramps. In those days, it was part of the pharmacopoeia. So now we also have this major environmental problem, and this is why I believe hemp is the most important solution. As far as the environment is concerned, you cannot find a more important plant to plant. We've got to get behind this. People say to me, like when I started doing this, they said, why are you doing this? I said, because I can. I have the energy to do this. I got squashed so many times. I've had people come and shut my whole place down, stop me producing what I was doing. I've had people do all sorts of silly things to try to stop this motion, but I feel it's so important. I let go of everything else in my life to pursue this. And it's sort of like getting a train started using your foot. You know, you've got this enormous weight, and there's this inertia that you've got to get moving, and people have got to get behind this. That's why Adam's brought me here, because he's behind that, and he's behind creating the solutions. And if anybody says, we can't do it, we don't have enough power, I'm going to tell you right now, you can. And that's what I say, I can. Isn't that Obama's thing? Anyway, the thing is with hemp, we can produce food, superior food. We can produce fuel, including ethanol, which is from the fiber of the plants is one of the highest cellulose materials, the fastest growing cellulose. I'll get into some more statistical information about that for those people that would like to know about that. Paper, when you produce paper from hemp, oh, this is such a big one, okay? This is hemp paper. This is unbleached paper. I got another paper here, a newspaper. How much does this newspaper cost? How much does it cost the environment? I'll tell you how much it costs. I've got friends in Tasmania. They sent me live footage of the nice tree harvesters down there and what they're doing. They're chopping down all the trees. I've been there myself. You know, the general same old thing. We're going to chip up all these trees and we're going to bleach them and smash them up and make them into paper. But what's the cost of that? Apart from the chemicals that they use to break up that wood, they're importing $3 billion worth of pulp because our paper that we produce here is weak. You can't make good paper using gum trees. It's terrible. So they import pulp from somewhere else, like Sweden or something. But that's not the beginning of the story. What happens is they say, it's okay, we're going to go in and we're going to plant these beautiful little seedlings, and you can then have a new forest 20 years later. But what they don't tell you is those little seedlings are very delicate. And because they've just now ripped away this whole environment of a whole bunch of animals that lived in the existing forest previously, they're hungry. So they go, oh, we're just starving. Let's go eat those nice little delicate plants. So they go in there and they start chewing on them. And they go, the tree farmers say we can't have that, so we'll have to put out this super deadly poison. Oh, so this is the photographs I've got. I didn't bring one to show you because it's horrific, and I might get thrown in jail if I show you. The little animals go and eat the poison. They're dying of thirst from this poison, so they run over to this creek and the streams, and they're drinking and drinking. No matter how much they drink, they can't get off of this poison, so they just keel over and they land in the creek. Downstream, there's a whole little community of people who take their water out of that creek. This is the downstream effect of this method that we've been using to harvest trees to produce paper. This paper can be recycled twice. Tree paper can be recycled twice. Hemp paper can be recycled 8 times. And the difference is that in 2 years, on a sustained yield, I can produce the fiber, which is 8 times better than trees. In 2 years, I can produce the same volume of woody material that I could get if I'd grown the forest for 20 years whilst wrecking everything around me, right? We don't need to cut down another tree, folks. We just need to grow hemp. Wood products, right? This is wood. This is a piece of a hemp plant. Like I said, 7 months and you can have a tree, right? This woody material is what they used in the Mesopotamian foundations of the bridges. We're now building buildings in Australia using this as well. I'll show you some pictures in a minute, but I just want to show you that this fiber here, this is the outer fiber which has been cleaned from the bark of this hemp tree, right? It's very light, it's very fluffy. If I roll this up and just twist it once, you will not be able to break it with your hands. It's 4 times stronger than steel. If you mash that plant up, if you take this whole plant and you mash it while it's green and you extrude it, you don't even need any like chemicals or anything. There's glue in this already. It's called lignin. That's what they use to get out of the plant when they're producing paper. The chemicals are used to get rid of the lignin so that it can be mashed and pulped up. If you mash that up green and extrude it, you can turn it into a universal beam or any kind of wood product like molding or whatever. You can actually turn that into what is equivalent to timber, but actually probably a fraction of the weight and possibly up to 4 times stronger than steel. The same plant again. That's the wood products. The textiles. I spoke to a man who lives up in Albury in Wodonga area, and he's trying to get us to make hemp socks with him. Now, this is what they make the textiles with. This is a hemp outfit that I'm wearing. The clothing is unsurpassed. If you grew hemp instead of cotton, does anybody know how much poison cotton uses? Massive, massive amounts of poison and all the other chemicals that end up going down into our lovely rivers, isn't it? Now, if I grew hemp instead as a fiber for my textiles, what I end up with, this guy that I've talked to with the socks, right? He wants to make hemp socks. He's got a towel from his family that he brought over from Romania. I think it's Romania. Anyway, this towel's over 100 years old, and he's still using it. It's got his family initials on. 100-year-old towel. Has anybody ever seen a 100-year-old towel? Because it's hemp, it doesn't wear out. Okay, now if I'm going to grow this hemp fiber, in a field, instead of cotton, that field is going to need a quarter of the amount of water that I would use if I was going to grow cotton. It would use virtually no chemicals. You might use a very, very small amount of something to balance something out, but it's basically not necessary. But the other amazing thing is this plant, this hemp fiber, will out-yield the cotton 400 times. And then it's going to last for 100 years. Why are we growing cotton? It's nice stuff. You can make the same things with hemp. And in fact, come out and see the trousers outside that are made from hemp. They're like silk. They're not even bleached. It's the raw fiber. It's unbelievable fiber. It's so beautiful. Okay, we've got cosmetics for your body. You put the hemp seed oil on your body. It's wonderful for your skin. It has all sorts of healing properties. I'm going to go into that in depth in a minute. The other thing is the oil. I don't know if any of you have been using the ladies' or gents' room today, but I've oiled the doors now so they don't squeak anymore. Hate squeaky doors. The other thing is, I know a guy that's a motor car racer and he drives Formula cars, and he was on a race and he broke the crankcase, cracked. And he had this hemp oil, because we'd been talking about how amazing the lubricant properties of that are, the anti-friction properties. So he poured this hemp oil in his car and he finished the race. But the thing is, he shouldn't have been able to even race the car. He should have just died and that would have been it. But on another level, on the oil level, it can be used in massive amounts of industrial applications, that includes paints, natural paints. It can be used to make resins, very similar to what you call, the resins you use in fiberglass. Oh, incidentally, this fiber here, the PSI of that compared to fiberglass, which fiberglass is around 58,000, the PSI of this is 116. It's twice fiberglass. Twice as strong as fiberglass if you're using it in that application. This is a bat for insulation. I work with builders a lot. We're building hemp buildings already in Australia, by the way, in case you didn't know. It's already happening. It's very, very slow, like I said, but it is coming. You're here, you're all ambassadors for this, because now you know and you are learning about why we have to find these solutions. But this bat has no chemicals. It doesn't leave scratchy stuff on you, and it can be produced at a fraction of the cost of fiberglass. Bugs hate it. Bugs hate hemp because it has these smells in it or whatever that just puts them off, so you don't even have the termite problem. This is actually produced in Germany. It's not made in Australia yet, but we are working towards making that happen. The rodents don't really bug it. It's just a question of how you're using it. That would obviously be used in a ceiling or a wall, which should be a sealed cavity. I don't know. I mean, they probably would go in it if it was in the right place or situation, but generally most animals and insects avoid it. It's got a smell. I always think this is really funny, but if you speak to people, I reckon about 7 out of 10 people I speak to have smoked pot. And about 2 out of those 10 people have grown it. And, the war on drugs isn't going to happen because everybody just connects with that plant. I don't smoke pot myself. I did when I was younger. It's just not part of my life anymore. But the point is, if you ever smelt that plant, it's got a real skunky smell, a very strong aroma. And I believe that the smell is actually created from the plant in order to actually protect it. It's like BO, it's saying, don't come over near me because I don't want to be chewed, And it's sending out this smell. That smell is also part of the chemistry. The cannabinoids are actually one of the highest medicinal plant properties that you can get. There's people, many people are always asking me this every week. It drives me mad. They're producing this oil from the leaves, and it's classified now as a narcotic, but really it doesn't have the same effect as smoking pot. It has some of the effects, but it has this healing properties. A chap in Canada, which is where I'm originally from, is producing a product, Rick Simpson, and it's oil, and he's curing thousands of people with cancer. But personally, I don't support that whole thing so much. I'm not against it, but I don't promote it because it creates confusion in people. Like there's a lot of confusion about what this plant's about. And I'm trying to make a clear difference between that so that people feel safe, they feel comfortable, you know. Are we giving our kids narcotics? Or, you know, I go to the trade show and I show them my body butter. Would you like to try it? It's the most beautiful product, you know. And they're going, oh, am I going to get stoned? You know, because the kids don't know what it is. You go, no, it's just like vegetable oil, right? Here's some of the materials that you can produce with hemp, the pellets that are for burning. You can produce the preparatory points for the insulating material and fiberboard, and then there's your final products. This is a wall from one of our buildings on a property. We've got 2 buildings which are made with hemp. That was a monolithic dome. That's another wall. That's a 9-meter wall right there. We just completed rendering that off. The difference between hemp fiber and traditional materials is if I took a square meter of this wall, which is 200 mils thick, the insulation properties are off the chart. But the most beautiful thing is it doesn't off-gas anything and it breathes. And I estimate the cost of making that, excluding our labor, is around $10 a square meter. It's more flexible than any building material around. In fact, a friend of mine who I made some bricks with this stuff, I had big arguments with my husband about this. He said, oh, it'll never work and it'll work. I said, just shut up and just do it. Because, you know, I'm an innovator and I want to do new ideas. And people, if they're not familiar with something, there's always this resistance. Oh, you know, really, is it going to work? Yeah, it works beautifully. My friend's got this gun and he shoots it at point blank range and it just takes a little divot out of it like this. And he says, what is this stuff? What are you building, a bomb shelter? But it's very flexible. It's very flexible and it's very light, very lightweight. This is a load-bearing mix that I developed myself. It's not commonly known. The traditional method is where you just use this woody material from inside, and then we've added the long fiber to this as well, plus some other materials, which I'm willing to share with you. And if you get our newsletter, you get all the recipes, okay? So that's the finished dome structure. Just to give you another insight on hemp as far as the environment is concerned, because there's always this big talk about carbon, which I think is also a myth. Hemp's very effective for eliminating carbon dioxide from the environment. Every ton of cellulose grown uses and removes 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide. For example, 200,000 hectares of hemp were grown, averaging a yield of 12 tons of the dried matter, and 3.6 million tons of carbon dioxide would be removed. That's a lot of carbon, and as long as you put it then into a building or something that locks that and entombs it, that then locks that carbon up. It also makes what you've just built extremely tough. The carbon actually adds to the strength. There's the hemp paper. Not all hemp paper looks like that. You can turn hemp into just your normal looking nice white paper that you see. No problem. It takes a lot less chemicals because it doesn't have the same substance as trees. The textiles, in Australia, we're working on textiles right now. We've got a lot of irons in the fire. This is a lady that I work with from China who does, the Chinese have never stopped doing hemp. There's a funny kind of double standard going over there, but we've got some fiber here in the Dorito bag. This has come straight out of a machine from Australia. An Australian innovator, inventor guy created a machine that you can take it straight onto the field, push in your hemp stalks, and out comes the fiber. This hasn't been cleaned or modified in any way, but if you feel it, it's very silky. It's a beautiful fiber. He's now going to start producing those in a bigger way, but unfortunately, Australia lost a lot of its textile industry because we couldn't keep up with Asia. Now, if we made that in Australia, if we made that textiles, we could compete. Even from China, the textiles there are around $22 a meter for just pure hemp fiber cloth. It's not cheap. That's wholesale. But it's because there's a lot involved. They don't have that technology to produce that fiber on the field. They're still doing the old method. The old grannies are out there chopping it by hand, and they soak it in a vat. There's a lot involved in it. Hemp plastic, this is really exciting, folks. This is a product from a company where they're adding it into the plastics. There's a lot of car companies now, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they're using that in the internal paneling of the cars because there's some kind of ruling now that says you have to have some degree of organic matter so that that can then in future break down and decompose and not just sit there and create another environmental hazard. We've got a guy in Mildura that we're going to be seeing on Monday. We've given him some hemp fiber to try. He's a recycling plastic genius. He's developed this amazing process. He's developed a material which is just from your milk bottles and your water bottles and all that rubbish that people are trying to get rid of and bury because they've made it, but now it's no use. He's getting that all for free, chops it up, and he's done it in a way where he's added some other components, including wood chips, which is now going to convert over to hemp chips and hemp fibers. And that end product, he has started it because he had vineyards, and he said, well, all the wood things that we put in the ground, we put it in the ground, and then it rots. It starts rotting, or it gets termites, or it gets something, it burns. His material doesn't burn, it doesn't rot, and it doesn't decompose. And he virtually gets it for free because it's waste products from all our milk bottles and water bottles. He told me the other day when I spoke to him, he said, we've just made this sample of a sheet, like a panel of hemp fiber mixed with the plastic, recycled plastic. And they did the bullet test. Everybody loves this ballistic thing, let's shoot it and see what happens. So the bullet crumpled and it didn't go through. So that was exciting. And that's what we'll be doing soon in this state. Victoria is going to start being the leader in the hemp production in Australia, including buildings, because we brought our hemp ideas into this area. Hemp grows here really well. In southern New South Wales and Tasmania and Victoria are probably the best for growing the varieties that are for oil production. The tropical varieties grow bigger, hardier plants, but they're virtually there's no machines that go up to 7 meters high, so they're not practical the big plants are not practical in the long term as far as mass production. Okay, there's some of our body products that we produce. All our products that we do are full of hemp seed oil, and the reason that we use the hemp seed oil I'm going to go into in depth. This is what a hemp seed looks like, and like I said, 1,000 seeds is about 20 grams. When you crush that seed, you get, this is the protein, which is from the seed cake all ground up, and that's your hemp seed oil. It's a very dark green oil. Officially in Australia, we can't sell that as a food. Can you believe that? Our government hasn't changed. We've had an application for 2 years in trying to get that changed, to change the legislation. I'm going to go to Canberra with a big banner. Julia, if you want us to vote for you, just put hemp on the agenda. If she got behind hemp, that would just be the most marvelous thing for this country. If anybody gets behind it, it'll be marvelous. Okay, the difference between hemp and other proteins, hemp protein could replace just about all the proteins on the market. Number one, all the fish that are being raked out of the sea and the lakes, there's hardly any fish left in the world. You just talk to fishermen. We talk to everybody in the primary industries because we're involved in those industries. There's hardly any fish left. All of the farming practices where animals are created to feed human beings are really diabolical. They involve a lot of bad practice, and torment for those poor creatures. The thing with hemp is, if you compared it to any meat product, it's approximately double the protein. So say a chicken is 14% protein, hemp's 32 to 35% protein, complete protein. But the difference again, and then compare it to soybeans, which are approximately the same as hemp, but you can't digest a soybean. In Ayurvedic medicine, soybean isn't even classified as a food. It's classified as a not food. Don't even feed it. They're feeding it to all the animals. They put it in your bread. Soybeans are not for human consumption, sorry. And forget about soy milk. All it does is produce mucus and clog up your whole bloodstream. It's not a solution. It's a way to feed more people so we can have more worker ants. The thing is, when you cook protein, you lose 2 of the essential amino acids. The essential amino acids means you have an incomplete chain. This is very simplistic. If that key has to open that cell to produce a body cell, but I don't have complete protein, all my amino acids, I can't open the doors. And so what it does is it deposits in between your cells and creates sickness. Almost everybody you meet is decomposing and sick because they're full of all this undigested protein. No other animals cook their protein. You never see the dingo roasting his lamb on the fire, do you? No. We're the only creatures that cook our protein. And it sets up huge amounts of problems. I'm convinced that a human being should be able to live at least for 150 years, comfortably and healthily, if they have the right nutrients. You can eat this stuff raw. You can get the seeds and shell them off, and you get, by the way, hemp's got 3 times as much calcium as milk. That's another part of it. Okay, there's your hemp comparison on your omegas. Some gentleman came before, I wouldn't answer his question. He was trying to pin me and saying, does that mean I'm supposed to stop?
Yes. I'll use that random noise to say that. But 5 minutes, is that okay?
I'll try to wrap it up in 5 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, everyone's loving this, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Anyway, he says, don't we get enough omega-6? Because he says, well, hemp's got too much omega-6. Everybody's using this argument because you hear it from the nutritionalist people, right? That's a myth, folks. It's a big myth. Your body needs 3 times more omega-6 than 3, but what is the omega-6 you're getting in your diet? Where does it come from? The primary source that's quoted as your source, sorry to tell you, it's margarine. Margarine is just rubbish. It's plastic. It's hydrogenated oil, which is full of trans fats. You know why everyone's got cholesterol? Because they're eating margarine, which is eating holes through your blood veins, and it makes you sick. Okay, so the hemp seed oil, it's got the most broadest profile, but your body needs 1 part of omega-3 to 3 parts of omega-6. And if you eat more omega-6, you'll replace all that rubbishy omega-6 that you've been eating through all your cookies and bread and all the other garbagey oils that people get in their diets that are not healing, and they're not essential oils, they're twisted oils. Essential oils are pure, natural, cold-pressed oils. It also has super omega-6 and GLA, which is like gamma-linoleic acid, which is what you get out of other seeds that are really rare for the hormonal system. I could just talk to you about this for hours. The science in it is just unbelievable. Okay, look how much corn it takes to make a tablespoon of oil. You don't need that much hemp. This is what happens. We eat all this, and then what happens? That starts decomposing our cells and starts the free radical damage on the cells. Your body needs, for every single cell in your body, the mitochondria, which is your powerhouse of your cell, your nucleus, your cell membrane, are all made with fatty acids. If you don't have those fatty acids, you decompose. Why is there an epidemic of cancer? Cancer and heart disease, not getting enough of the good fats. The cells get trapped. They get trapped here, and they don't flow down the capillaries. Then your body decomposes because nothing's getting fed into there. You've got all this rotting stuff in there, right? This is why hemp is so important, because it has the best essential fatty acid composition of all oils, the highest protein and the best fatty acids, the best balance for the humans. People are just living on sugar. This is one of the biggest causes of cholesterol in your body too, between stress and sugar. There's this science in this, folks. I mean, I don't have time to tell you all this, but I just get so excited about it, and it's mind-boggling when you see the figures on this, how it all works. Read Udo Rasmus's book on fats. I'm writing a book now to explain all this stuff, but it's just amazing. How do they get fish oil? Do you ever think about that? Do they wring it out of the fish? No, I'll tell you how they do it. They get this fish, all these poor fish that they've farmed usually. They harvest this fish and they feed it to you and say, yes, this is lovely, it's salmon, right? They take its guts, its skin, its head, and eyeballs, and they throw it in a big vat. They boil the hell out of it because it's, stinky. Then all the oil floats to the top. Then they have to bleach that because it's gray. Then they deodorize it, and they put it in a lovely capsule. What happens if you cook an essential oil is you destroy it. They tell you this is health food. It's the biggest myth going around in the health industry. Fish oil is not good for you. I can give you hundreds of tests that show all of the peer-reviewed studies on fish oil that say it's all rubbish. Hundreds of them. Okay? We're all getting programmed the way they want you to. This explains what your cell composition and the fat in the cells and how the cell breaks down. This is what happens in a healthy cell. Then you insert these trans fats, cell breaks down, decomposing body. So what do we want to do? Do we want to live like this, where everything's just going horrible and black and more congested and rubbish? Or do we want to evolve into a higher state of consciousness? I personally believe using hemp is one of the most important choices you can make as a human being to support that plant, because it will rectify enormous amounts of damage that are happening through other practices of farming and living in our general lifestyle. Joanna Budvig, who discovered essential fatty acids back in the 50s, she was a biochemist. She was friends with people like Max Planck and Otto Warburg and Einstein. They were her pals. They'd go to parties, play violin, play music. And she told them about this stuff, and they said, well, it's a real crime, because they were developing margarine at the time. And they said, well, we've got to make margarine work, because there's all these billions of dollars that you can make from fat, and people need fat, so we've got to shut you up. She should have got a Nobel Prize. She was sent to court 7 times to try to throw her in jail for practicing medicine, because all she was doing was feeding people healthy fat. You're practicing medicine? She said, no, I'm just telling him to eat good oil. She discovered that the electrons in your cells vibrate at a higher rate when you have those oils in your body. So personally, I believe if we want to raise our consciousness, we've got to have the high-grade fats, because you're an antenna. You're an antenna for consciousness and for the vibration of the source. You're the antenna. So when you have that oil, you will vibrate at a higher level. And Joanna Budvig called the bad fats, she called it anti-mensch, which means against man, because she knew that it would lower our consciousness and make us stupid. Dumb and down. Let's keep them dumbed down, right? Keep them in the dark. These are just some of the uses of hemp. I reckon there's at least 50,000 that we could list straight off the top. But I guess I'm supposed to stop talking. There we are. Welcome to the future.